Welcome to Rooted and Rising, a soulful podcast hosted by Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Join the conversation as Dr. Cheri and Ellice explore the transformative power of holistic healing from the inside out. Together, they guide listeners through the deep work of reconnecting with their roots, uncovering the unconscious wounds that shape us, and rising into the fullness of our higher selves. So please, welcome the hosts of Rooted and Rising, Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone.
Welcome to Rooted and Rising again with myself, Dr. Cheri, and my co-host, Ellice Boone. We're excited about being here today, and so before we begin, I would like to start with a question, but this one I want you to not necessarily answer quickly. I'd like you just let it sit and see how it resonates within your being. For instance, what has your attention right now? Maybe not this moment, maybe the past week. Where do you put your focus? What do you find yourself thinking about? What do you find yourself reaching for? What preoccupies you in your day-to-day, moment by moment experience? Today, one of our greatest gifts we have is attention. And where we put our attention tells us how we're living our lives. And so, we don't recognize the commodity attention is. It and how the world is looking for our attention. Industries are vying for our attention. We're being monitored. With notifications, and if you get on your phone, you get commercials or ads that say are what your interest is, and we have all kinds of games, and we know social media that's striving for our attention. And so but unfortunately, that business model doesn't allow our humanity, our sense of humanness, always be expressed, and it takes our attention away from the moment, because our attention is also a way we express our love. It's how we heal. It's how we create. It's how we connect with ourselves and then with one another. And it's something that is just greater than ourselves. So, if you're, I just like you to think about and reflect, if your phone disappeared, let's say one full week, after the initial panic settled, who would you become? And I say phone, but it could be the TV, it could be the computer, technology. Let's say technology. And what would you do with yourself? Who would you become? Who would would you read again? Would you pray? Would you paint? Would you garden? Would you do some breath work? Would you laugh more? Would you cry more? Would you get outside more? As we talked, we just love the outdoors. Would you start writing, and then you're engaging your creative imagination more so? That is the one thing that technology can't replace, is our own creative imagination. So I'd like you to take a moment and just kind of reflect on that. What comes to mind? What has maybe disappeared if you have indulged in the technology, and perhaps they didn't dissolve. They're just simply waiting for you to place your attention there.
Cheri, this is such a good question. I hope our listeners take a moment to let that kind of sink in to their bodies, and really let something bubble up that feels real for you. Where has your attention really been? Be honest with yourself. The question feels powerful for me. And I know, as we've talked about this podcast in advance, this is something that I am really moving through right now. It's a personal struggle to find a balance of letting go of technology and setting it aside, instead of being constantly on my phone, constantly with notifications, constantly feeling like I need to do. And I feel that has been robbing me of some moments in my life, some precious moments. with my husband, with my daughter, just being a part of an experience. So it's a really important question and one that we thought I actually brought up because it's something I'm working through right now. So thank you for that question and for that beautiful description of how important our attention is and what that allows us to do when we put our attention in the places, those things that we love to do, those things that give us joy and bring us life and richness to our lives. I love that you said they don't disappear. They're just waiting. And what would we do if we had a little bit more time to a little bit more space in our lives to dedicate to those things? Yeah, so it's a good thing to think about. And I think this is a good lead in to doing a short meditation. So listeners, if you are in a quiet, private space, we just invite you to take a moment now to sink into your place. If you're sitting down in a chair, allow the chair to just kind of hold you, to just feel the support of the chair. And if you're on the floor, sitting or lying down, allow yourself just to sink in a little deeper. And maybe this is the first time today that you're taking a moment to just be in stillness, just to exist here with your breath. And so we want to take that precious attention and rest it only on our breath. And inviting you, if it feels good in this moment, to take a deep breath in through the nose and a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Doing that here 2 more times at your own pace, but just remember that deep inhale through the nose, maybe holding the breath for just a moment at the top, and then a longer, slower exhale through the mouth. Really allowing the body to sink deeper and relax more with each exhale. And last one, if you're not already there, through the nose and slow, long exhale, letting your body melt into the chair or the ground beneath you. And just noticing here what it feels like to be in stillness for a moment. Kind of doing an overall zoomed out view of the body, checking in on what it feels like to be here. Is there any part of you that stands out? Any messages coming through? What does it feel like to be in the body and be still? Oftentimes when we come to stillness, because we move at such a fast pace normally, and we're taking in so much information, and the body is just in constant motion, whether that's physically or internally. You want to notice what it feels like to truly be still. And it's okay and very common to feel a bit of restlessness here. Just notice what your body is doing and notice where your mind is. Notice if there's an urge to reach outside yourself, an urge to not be present, an urge to not be in this body, but to distract in some way. Notice if it feels uncomfortable. And then maybe bring your attention back to the breath. Breathing in and out, really allowing that discomfort to exist. And another deep breath in through the nose and a slow, long exhale telling your body with your breath that it is safe here. It is safe to just be. Allowing your attention to rest on the natural rhythm of your breath as your chest rises and falls. Appreciating the quiet and stillness of your body. And now I want to do a short visualization where I'd like you to in your mind's eye, just imagine all of these things in your outside world, the notifications, the emails, things that are not so physical, the expectation of other people, obligations, the comparison we put on ourselves. And imagine all of those things existing in some physical form, but outside of your own body. And visualize these cords that are attaching them to you. So you see that they're outside of your body, but there is a connection to you. There is a pull and an energy that is being transferred through these cords to all of these things, all of these obligations, all of these things that take your attention. And now, if it feels good for you, I want you to imagine very slowly and gently, with intention, just gently unplug each cord from your body, allowing those things to float freely around you, but without that connection, without that energy being pulled. And notice what it feels like as the energy that was being drained from those things is now returning to your body. As you unplug, you feel the energy come back to you, returning back from work, returning back from opinions of others, returning back from anything that is taking your attention away. And feel that energy just sort of gather in your heart space. Allow yourself to take a deep breath in here, pulling the energy back and feeling the energy expand inside your body. And now I want you to imagine that there are roots extending beneath you. Imagine these roots slowly and steady. They're growing beneath you, attaching you to the energy of the earth beneath, allowing you to feel strength and groundedness, and also remaining in stillness while pulling energy up into your body from the earth below. Allow that energy again to come into the heart space and expand and grow. Just really sitting with this expansion, this lightness, and however that visualization comes to you or that sensation lands in your body, just soak that in this moment. And if it feels good for you to repeat after me in your mind or out loud, I am enough. I am returning to myself. All of the energy I have, I can expand. I have everything I need within myself. My attention is mine to choose. My energy is mine to give. And now taking a final deep breath here, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Letting yourself just sit with that energy and any feelings here. And thanking yourself for showing up and taking just a moment to be in stillness, to gather up and expand the energy within you, and to let go for just a moment of anything that might be pulling you away or taking away that precious attention. And if it feels good now, we invite you to take your time here, slowly come back into the space, maybe with a soft gaze, if you flutter your eyes open, allowing yourself to just move slow and appreciate the moment that you had here with yourself. Thank you so much for joining in that meditation. I hope that it felt like a good little recharge or a nice moment of reflection, if anything, and encouraging our listeners not to have any judgment in these meditations. That feels important to say. Again, just to be with them, whatever comes up. The fact that you took that time for yourself in that moment is enough. It's beautiful. So thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Elise. It was, as always. And I love to give some feedback. I would like us to take a break, though. And I still think it'd be great to take a break and, honor our sponsors. And so we'll be back in a minute here with Rooted and Rising. Thank you.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to Rooted and Rising. We're talking about, where we put our attention to and how technology can hijack us, even with our unawareness, because life is so intertwined with a relationship with technology today, especially our phones, our computers, our TVs. And we just had a beautiful meditation. And if you're joining us late, please, check the recording because it was a beautiful meditation. And I think it's so timely for what we're dealing with in our day-to-day lives today. For me, at least, it was what was interesting this time is that the enlightenment I got, I was relaxing, but my mind brought memories, and today we talk about, with technology and computer games, our children are just like, they don't know a different world, and it's changing so fast. And then we have AI, and we're just partnership with this so much, is the lines get so blurred. But I remembered, as a child, I would do my homework all the time in front of the TV. I always multitasked. I think I always had a relationship with some kind of technology, even in my day, and I thought that was fascinating to realize, and then the message I got, that I received for myself was, you need to be detached. You need to be unattached to, it's been everything. But when for today's topic is technology, and that not be unattached where I don't do technology at all. Obviously, my work now requires me 24/7. Really, I have my phone is my lifeline for some clients. My phone is, where my computer, my phone is how I run, businesses, how we do our podcast. There's so many beautiful things about technology, and imminent things that are necessary, that allows us to support one another, save lives, some really important, things. So, but it's the unattached in the multitasking. Our brains were not meant to get so much information and carry all the time. It really does tire our brains out. And so that just caught my attention. Is like, I'm always looking for energy, right? And we talked about energy, and we don't, and I think that we think if we go faster, like technology offers us to do everything faster, that we'll have more energy. Like, I can cut corners. I can, AI can really help us cut corners, correct? Maybe not accurately, but cut corners. But unfortunately, technology is only, if it marries us, is only marrying our brains, our intellect. It can't marry our hearts. And, we back to how heart energy is just so powerful, and it's what makes us human. So I was called back to, Cheri, start being human, make sure you don't lose that, and so thank you, Elise. It grounded me. The rooted part really grounded me. I feel like the trees roots, they are technology one another. They reach out to every tree in their neighborhood, and that network, we know, even the psilocybin, the mushrooms, like really the fungus, it really helps transfer all the information, and we know all that. But it's natural, it's not technology. It's a power we already have within ourselves. It's the cellular DNA information. Our DNA is a computer, in a natural way. And so if we can just tap into ourselves, and that comes from quieting the mind, the stillness, putting our attention back into ourselves, our loved ones, and really be proactive in how we want to live our lives. So that brought to my attention, and all that stuff. So I loved that, and so thank you. It was very enriching for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really incredible how we can go about our lives and think that we have all of this energy and that technology is saving us all this time. And yet, when we get onto it, it's designed to make us want to go for more. It's designed to sort of catch us in these loops, and it's designed for basically an addiction to form. And so I think what we have to look here is not that technology is bad. Like you said, it's wonderful for so many reasons, and to be a part of our modern day world, we have to know how to use it. We have to be engaged with it. But the question is, where is it robbing us from actual real life experiences? So there is a sacrifice that's made, and we all know, we all can feel it. So it's like doing this audit of our lives and just noticing, where are we being pulled away from things that are just more precious than saving a few minutes, more precious than responding immediately. Whatever it is, whatever is our pull, where are we giving up things in our life that are so much more important to maybe play longer on a game or respond to an email, whatever it is. And so that's the thing that we are kind of drawing attention to today, drawing attention to where is our attention and where are we spending our attention. And I remember someone told me at one point, it's wherever you place your attention, that is where that thing flourishes. It's like your awareness of something creates the soil for something to grow. And so if we're putting all of our attention in technology, over here, things aren't being watered. Over here in our family life, in our relationships, in our personal growth, in our spirituality, even our creativity, which I think is huge. Our creativity is something that's so important for us all to express. And if we're not using our space and our attention, we're not putting it into having open spaces for creativity to grow, then it just kind of shrivels up and dies. And we're missing out. And I think often my shortness or weakness, I would say, is that thing you mentioned about, oh, it's going to save me time. So it's like I'm consuming information constantly. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But actually, if we just pause and take a moment, that's when the ideas come. That's when things actually unfold for us. So I think that this is such an important conversation. Again, it's not about, shaming us for using technology, but more about where are we putting our energy? Where are we putting our attention? And is there a small way we can add some of the technology attention over to the relational attention? Or where are we lacking and where can we add to?
That is, a challenging mathematical thing, equation for us to do because, digital, information, digital interruptions are fast moving, and that's where dopamine pops come. They just are fast, immediate gratification, and relationships are require delayed gratification so much of the time. We need to slow down, be present. We do need to take breaths, and so it doesn't necessarily create that dopamine pop right away. But it creates, it does create a synergy of energy, if that makes sense, within our whole being, and it grows our heart, and then that's where the creative imagination comes in. And the creative imagination, it may not come fast, but it when we engage in it, we um, produce so much more than being interrupted by digital, fast information, and we grow, which digital, again, will suspends our growth if we're standing still and we're being spoon fed like robots, and that, if we can think about that, yeah, we make information like a robot does, but that's the limit, and it may look really impressive and fun, toy at first, but over time, we lose ourselves in so many ways, and our uniqueness, which I think is the tragedy. If our diversity, our uniqueness, our wonder, there's no time for it when we are doing all the digital stuff, and our brain can't, manage those interruptions. That's where the energy suck comes, and we
Mhm.
feel tired. And so, how can we show up for ourselves?
Right. I was thinking when you said that, it's interesting because this is even happening with children. And so, a personal example in our household, my daughter had an Alexa in her room and she was asking it lots of questions. It has its own AI. And she was relying on it for little things, but then she started, more educational things, this or that. How do I spell this? But then it started going deeper and she's asking it about friendships or what she should say to someone. And I didn't notice at first, but when we did, we realized that she was relying on this AI for all these answers, and it's telling her constantly all the good positive things. She's always right. Whatever she's saying is great. It's just like her biggest cheerleader. Well, that's great up until a point, because in human relationships, we have real feedback. What's really happening, a human's experience. And so we ended up taking the Alexa out of her room and having a really hard conversation with her about how she needs to have relationships with real humans to get real feedback. And it's so fascinating that this is now something we're dealing with our children. I'm like, I mean, we can go on this topic forever. I know we have a break coming up, so we will go to that. But wow, there's so many things to talk about. And this is something that's impacting us at every age and every level in different ways. So after the break.
Thank you. See you in a moment.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back to Rooted and Rising. Before the break, Elise was just sharing how, digital, technology has impacted her family personally, and how being a parent, and then how intoxicating it can be for our children, in really good ways, but not in good ways. And I think this is something to really talk about beyond neuroscience, what the dopamine pops do and how our brain can handle so much information. It really talks about, again, being present. And even parents it really requires what presence is, because we can we rely on technology, and then it's easy to have our kids rely on technology, and schools rely on technology, and they're even teaching children how to use AI productively. And because we can't dismiss everything, but we just need to learn how to manage it. And that story was beautiful, at least on how to manage it, how as parents, partners and parents, and then how to talk, like you talk to her. You didn't just take the Alexis away, you talked to her about it, and how that was the challenge will be for her to switch gears again and not look for that reassurance, and how real relationships really are the barometer of what's really happening in today. So that was beautiful. And I think that is so important. Another thing, because when we think we're right, Alexa said, AI saying we're right all the time and we're getting quick answers like that, we do forget the human connection, which is being present with them, having eye contact, having maybe some touch, a shoulder, and crying with someone and laughing with someone. All that, down to the cellular level of our body, is how we grow and love and be.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's so human to desire that connection. And I think the challenge of AI and how we're managing this sort of like new thing that's come into our lives as humans is that because we desire connection, it feels like we can get it there in different ways. People can have these like deep conversations with chat, or talk to their Alexa, or whatever their AI preference is. They're developing, because that's our natural inclination, they're developing these relationships with something that is not human. And while we can get information from this, it doesn't have real human emotions. It is not real. And so it's almost like just eating a bunch of food that has no nutrient value, right? It's like this junk food of connection. And so we're constantly going out, and if we replace that with human connection because it feels easier or faster, then we're truly missing out on what fills our souls, what fills our hearts, how we create beautiful memories. And so that's the thing that we have to really look at and see if it's becoming something that is replacing real connection, real relationships. So it's something to really be cautious of. And it's a new renaissance of this. So we're all learning as we go. So it's like gentleness with ourselves, but also be aware and really notice so that you can make shifts that might be needed.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think that, with that, we may go through a period of a lot of emotional, emotional release. I mean, people even, they grieve, you know, um, technology, and because it does fill that space, that boredom. We do feel there's an engagement there, and unfortunately, some people get relationships like they feel like their personal relationship with AI. That's dangerous, and but they then have to grieve it, and I know with kids, like, you get the positive affirmation, you kind of forget, like, Joey, but I've witnessed kids where they also, I can see them getting technology, and then the mood switches immediately. The neuroplasticity of a child's brain, and it's usually, they're usually angry, or a distemper. They're impatient, they're irritable, and they don't want to be bothered by the humans around them. And that is unfortunate, because again, we keep rewiring that brain. That becomes part of their personality if we don't address it earlier on. They said, one of the causes of OCD was technology, and we know, and I don't know how much that science is now, but it's because the brain gets just wired and, one track, and like you say, it's designed for us to keep coming back, keep coming back, and therefore we can't expand. And so it becomes far more consuming than we recognize, and takes away, I feel like, can take away that whole other realm of us, the mind, body, and spirit, the spiritual, sense of ourselves. So we can really cut that out and let the technology fill that void and fill that space, and then we try to find it again. It's kind of like, we're a stranger to our own spiritual sense, and sense of self, and that can feel kind of scary, untethering. People say, I feel untethered, and it's like, no, you have all this other aspect of yourself. It's been waiting for you again. And obviously, when you find it, if it's so rewarding and you get it, it's like, I get it. That's the one great thing, is people get it. Once they're away from the technology, they get what they were missing. And that is
Mhm.
really, because I think our humanity, the human being in us.
Yeah, that's so true. And there's so many reasons why we reach for technology. It fills a lot of voids. Like I said, it kind of has this replacement fast food feeling of getting connection, but it could also be avoidance from emotions that we're feeling. It can often be a way of numbing out grief for people. And you say often how unprocessed grief is one of the major reasons for depression and things that people are experiencing. A lot of psychosis is coming from grief not being processed through their bodies, through their minds, being able to feel and express it so that it can move through you. And so this is technology, unfortunately, is this way that we just have immediate access to. We can always distract ourselves with it. It's always at our fingertips. And so what a powerful like draw that we must have to that if we have anything moving through us. So really the tactic here, and I've worked on this myself, is asking myself when I'm reaching for my phone, what's underneath that? Is there any kind of feeling when I'm like, oh, it's time to go scroll on Instagram? Is there something that I'm feeling that wants to be expressed? Could I maybe write in my journal instead? Could I take a moment and just sit with myself? And that can be really challenging, but that's the moment. If we can pivot there and think before we grab our phone, every time we reach for it, is there anything underneath this? Is there something else I should be looking at? And just see if there's anything we're avoiding, distracting from, trying to numb out from. And that could be a really powerful shift in our lives, if we just notice that.
Yes, I think very much so. And I think it can be very subtle. And I, reflect on a story that you shared with me was, that I think you're being called by I think your daughter, and you said, yes, I'll be there, and in a minute, and it is 10 minutes later, because whatever you're doing on your phone, and not realizing 10 minutes went by. And I think that's such a great example of how subtle it can be. There's no ill intent, and you may not be avoiding. Now you're already sucked into the vortex of finishing that post, finishing that game, finish that article you're reading, or that task you're doing on the phone. It's not, but it does. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we could be avoiding, and we could just be distracted. Our brain can't switch over. Again, we're already inundated with too much information, and too many interruptions, even from the digital, that we can't be interrupted from our people, effectively, and without that battle of it being second us in still. So I thought that was a
Yeah.
beautiful example. You could share it better. I was impressed by that story.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's so many examples I have like that because I've noticed more recently, and I think that's why I wanted to do this podcast because it feels so present for me in my life. It's such a struggle. It's a constant battle to set down my phone when she's like, "Hey, mommy," and I can tell she needs my attention. And yet, like you said, I'm like, "Oh, just this one thing." And boom, 15 minutes, 20 minutes has gone by. And here I am showing her what's more important than my presence with her. What's more important to her? That's what a child's brain says. The phone that mommy is staring at is more important than me. And so, like, do we want to be continuously over and over again giving our children this message? Or can we set aside specific time to use it or set it down and be present and then come back to something? It's really a battle. And so I am in the mode of still working through how to do this. It is not easy. And it's something I'm really trying to figure out on a day-to-day basis.
And I think that's how we can ask ourselves, is just to be present and conscious of it, because like we can't, it's not good for us to cut it out. I mean,
Yeah.
then we kind of lose, we're in never land. And so we just have to learn what kind of relationship we want to have with our digital technology, and how does that, how do we manage that within our true relationships with our loved ones, and all humanity that we engage in, and then and then I should say first with ourselves, because we lose ourselves, and it's like watching these children change, their personalities change or their emotions change overnight. Talk about losing yourself, and their little neuroplastic brains, being formed that way, unintentionally. And so that, to me, that's like a pandemic crisis of some sort, because we don't want that for our young ones, and also, but for ourselves, with neuroplasticity happens throughout. And so just being like super conscious of that, then we just is just taking an assertive step in owning that we have to manage our lives.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think this conversation also came up because we, a little while back, made our retreats unplugged. And this is something that has been really powerful in itself. Just the fact of check in your phones here, we're unplugging for the weekend, and what that impact, how that unfolds with the women. You can almost like see in the beginning this sort of like antsiness and almost like twitchiness. And we've all, like, I've experienced it, and then that leaves way for like this spaciousness. You can almost see it on their faces, in their bodies. They're unplugging completely, and it's almost like the meditation where you're like literally unplugging this source of like energy drain, this pull, this distraction that we constantly have, and we're just allowing all of this beautiful space for growth and creativity, spirituality, self-awareness. All of these things can just pour out of you when you have the space and your attention isn't being, gone every single direction at once. It's pretty amazing what we can create when we're not consuming information. We can actually output. We can output creativity. We can do so much more. So that's been incredible to watch.
Yes, yes. And I think there is initially a little bit of resistance, because today's society, I grew in an era, I was just talking to my brother about it. It's like we ran the streets, we ran the mountains, we left early in the morning, and we didn't come and back home until after dark. It's like, and there was no talk about it, playing with the, among the trees and the insects and the, and the wildlife, and the cactuses falling into them, and just not thinking anything of it. And it was really beautiful. But even my brother said, but I would never let my kid do that now. It's like, so is a different world. And so the parents will, people will say, I need my phone to be able to, for safety reasons, to check on my kid, for my kid to be safe. So all this is, it's that first safety instincts, that primal need to be survival mechanism kicks in. And it's, in many situations, it's false security. It's what our brain is conditioned to. And so with that balance again, that it's funny to watch that primal, reaction happen. So this
Yeah.
is really important for us to talk about. And so again, it's about staying present and being and kind of reflecting on, where am I with this right now? And we'll talk more about that. It's time to take a break right now. So we'll take a break and we'll be back in a moment.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Hi, welcome back to Rooted and Rising. I'm Elise, and this is Dr. Cheri. We were talking before the break about all the different ways that technology can pull our attention. And so now we just want to end this podcast with some practical advice and things that you can do at home, some simple things. And the first one is kind of understanding where you're losing your attention, where technology is pulling you away. So you can call it like an attention audit. So you're going to take note of this. This can be first thing when you wake up in the morning, or maybe before you go to sleep at night. Just ask yourself a few of these questions. What was I mostly consuming today? And where was I creating? Where in my life did I feel most present today, this week? Where do I want to give my attention or more of my attention tomorrow? Now, there's a lot of different things that you can work with in here. There's a lot more questions you can allow them to arise naturally for yourself. But what we're aiming for here is just taking note, just noticing where our attention is going and where we want to be putting more of it. And that's the first step. That's the first step in making change in your life. So it's just creating this awareness around that. And then Dr. Cheri, we talked about doing a challenge. Do you want to share a little bit with listeners on a challenge they could maybe do this week?
Yes, I would love that. We talked from the beginning about where do we put our attention. It's about where our attention is. And I think that we're not asking you that, again, to completely let go of digital technology and the relationship with it. We're asking for it to create other space for the other things that are probably a priority. And for you to remember, if you're kind of consumed with technology, and I as I reflect on this, I realize I'm more consumed with technology than I really am aware of, have been aware of, or admit at times. And that's where the self-awareness comes. When I catch that, then I automatically want to make time for these challenges I'm going to talk about. And when I engage in the challenge, I really remember what was I put on the back burner.
Mhm.
And then I kind of strive and want more of that. And so then a balance will naturally evolve. I believe a balance will naturally evolve when we remember both aspects of it. So that's what we're kind of looking for, is how do I get balance back in my life? And really, I'm the driver in the of the car, rather than the technology driving me. And so I think everyday little things, the challenge of, can you leave your phone home and go for a walk? Because a lot of times I'll go for my my walk or my run, and I'll take my phone for the time, and time is another fascinating, thing we need in our human existence, but also can be a distraction in living life and really focusing on what's important. And so, or just catch, you see a sunrise, and just watch it without getting your phone out to take a picture, because a lot of times we'll take pictures, and we'll get lost in the picture, and like even go back, and we forget the story around the moment that we saw the sunrise. And so we want to embody these experiences. When's the last time you like read a real book? And not on your technology, but and just read a chapter in a book. That always feels different to me to this day. Then I kind of slow down automatically. I pick the book up. I just have to slow down, and just it's really fascinating. You can share, one uninterrupted meal. I know, I'm sure you have been participating. I have, gone out for dinner and see people on their phones, rather than sharing with one another, even at home, put the phones down and just share a meal, and share stories. And so that is another one. And, write a handwritten note to somebody. When's the last time we've done that? With texting and emailing? When have we just left someone a nice little handwritten note, or or just spend an hour just daydreaming, creating, and doing, and just see what comes up, and that you can entertain yourself with. And so and then lastly, just what if you just put 15 minutes aside of doing nothing, no agenda? We just don't do that nowadays. It feels like an indulgence or a waste. So those are some different challenges I thought of that I want you to step into. I think would be really great.
I love all of those, Cheri. Thank you. I'm definitely taking some of those to challenge myself to do this week. That's so beautiful. Oh, well, we're going to end with our journal prompts. And so we just encourage you to take a moment to write. And as always, free writing is such a beautiful way to access your subconscious and really clarify your thoughts as well, to see what's underneath what's happening in the mind, or how we're reacting. And so this is another way to deepen in this exercise as well. So maybe a few prompts you could use this week would be, what am I reaching for when I reach for my phone? So kind of that practice of, again, what's underneath this, or am I trying to avoid? Am I trying to deflect something that I need to feel? What relationships deserve more of my undivided presence? And lastly, if I reclaim 1 hour every day away from technology, who could I become? Who would I become? So I hope you enjoyed those journal prompts. We really enjoyed spending this time with you. Please like, follow, and share if you enjoyed our podcast. And until next time, stay rooted
And keep rising.
This has been Rooted and Rising with hosts Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Through honest conversation, clinical insight, and creative reflection, Dr. Cheri and Ellice will empower you to reclaim your voice, your vitality, and your vision. This podcast is not about quick fixes. It's a return to deep knowing, gentle unraveling, and lifelong integration. Tune in each week, Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern,